Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the 9th day of June, 2022. Well, I hope everybody's having a good week. We got our tomatoes in the other day, which was very cool. And the peppers, I don't know if we'll do them today or maybe Saturday or something. We're getting them acclimated. They've been under lights. And they're looking pretty good, though, I have to say. My husband did a really good job on them. And he does the tomatoes and the peppers. He gets those going and transplanted and whatnot. And and we always use seeds from the other year. We just make sure we save some. So we tend not to. I mean, I still buy a lot of seeds, but we try not to, if we can. But sometimes you just have to. So anyway, so today's the hearing, and it starts at 5 o'clock our time, and that's the first day of it, so that'll be interesting to watch that. And let's see, though, what the esoteric influences are for today. If this is your first time here, welcome. I appreciate you so much coming by, and everyone who still comes and watches this, I really appreciate it. I start out with the esoteric influences from the weekly posts that I do over on the blog at Stepping Aside. The web address there is imsteppingaside.com. You can scroll down, if you can hit show more and scroll down, and you'll find some links, and the website address is there too. So anyway, check that out if you want to see the whole thing. It also comes out in a weekly newsletter, among some other things I put in. And so if you want to sign up for that, there's you just go to the blog and just scroll down a little bit on the left side panel. You'll see it. It says newsletter sign up or some such thing. I had to update it. I had to update the link because it wasn't working, and so I don't know what happened there. Something with WordPress or something changed, and so I had to do that. But anyway, it's there if you want to sign up for it. You can always unsubscribe anytime you want to, though, if you're like me and you have way too much stuff in your inbox. So anyway, but the esoteric influences for today, given that it's the 9th, this is not life path, by the way. This is just the day itself. We're talking endings, completion, generosity, spirituality. Othala is the rune for today from the Elder Futhark. Now, it's the 24th one. It means tradition, inheritance, sacred space, the Akash, protection, prosperity, loyalty, possessions. The Geomancy rune is acquisitio, or gain. It's also goal-oriented, means fortune, success, inspiring. And it can also mean overconfidence and excessive behavior. The sun's in Gemini, the moon's in Libra, and the planetary governance is Jupiter today if you're working magic. So you're happiest in a career that allows you the freedom to explore truth. However, you may also feel that collaborative efforts with others are holding you back when a new approach is necessary. Realize that while others are having their own experience, you may be ready to seek a career that gives you room for new opportunities. You may discover that the decisions you make are less about the common interest and more reflective of your own past experience. You may also benefit from restructuring your playbook as a means to develop long-term goals. If collaboration with others becomes possible, respect their contribution and any leadership skills they bring to the table. A lot of the times, collaboration with others works really well, but again, as long as egos stay out of it. But all too often that can happen. So sometimes you have to take a step back from it and think, well, maybe it's not the collaboration, the idea of collaboration that's the problem. Maybe it's just the folks I'm with, and there's just too much of that, vying for control or their way being the right way, and so nothing ever really gets done. So maybe it's just the wrong mix of people, maybe. And everyone would benefit maybe from some cleansing in that regard. So I don't know. But anyway, let's take a look at the rune for today for the reading. I'll leave the esoteric influences up, though, here, just in case I can refer to them. Lately, there's been some correlation between the reading and the esoteric influences for the day, which has kind of been interesting. Here we have Fehu, so it kind of does. Fehu is the first rune of the Elder Futhark, and it's about cattle and wealth that's movable, so transactions. How you transact with others. It doesn't have to necessarily mean money, but Fehu also means life force. It can be the sending rune in magic. You can chant Fehu, and when you're ready to send the intention into the universe, you can use it kind of as a impetus to do that. But because of the life force aspect, it doesn't just come down to finances. It comes down to the interactions we have with other people, how we transact. Are you somebody who makes your relationships and your interactions transactional? You know, is there always a quid pro quo, basically, about your experiences with other people? Or can you just interact without doing that? It might be the true wealth is not making your relationships so transactional. It's like the whole idea of random acts of kindness. You expect nothing for what you just did for somebody. You're just doing it to maybe help them, ease their way, be a friend, whatever. And you don't expect anything in return. Some people, I knew a guy once, he couldn't handle that. He had to do something in return. And it's almost like then he'd get angry, and whatever that something was, it was something he felt justified to do, right? So whatever kindness someone would show him, he just couldn't handle it. I don't know what that was about for him, but he was always that way. And it was odd. He couldn't just be grateful, you know, and appreciate the friendship. I don't know. Can't really figure out what about his life did that, but it did. Well, let's see. We're looking at, with the Geomancy rune, the below side of things today, Tristitia. Let me get that out of the little bowl here. Show you what that looks like. Is this it? No, that's Laetitia. It's complement. Tristitia is about sadness and grief. Not really so much about loss per se, but oh, here it is. But it's the ego side of that sort of experience. So you'll find when it's really, you know, dug in, then you're going to be seeing like things like grudges and being secretive and you know, kind of wanting to lash back maybe. But this is Tristitia. So we have passive influence for fire, air, water, and an active influence for earth. So it's a very ego-based type of reaction, whereas Amisio would be is another form of loss in Geomancy, but it's more like a decrease of something, whereas Acquisitio, its complement, would be gain. In this case, Laetitia is joy and fellowship, and it can portend good fortune and all of that, but then it's a higher self kind of experience, really. Whereas its complement, Tristitia for today, is more the ego side of that. So that's that. So at this point, you know, what are your transactions going to be like with Fehu and Tristitia today? Are they going to be ego based? Are they going to be if you don't get what you want, are you going to seek revenge of some kind on somebody? I'm looking for my tea. It's over there. Are you going to hold a grudge? You know, are you somebody that's so caught up in your own stuff that you can't, you know, allow for the possibility that other people have choices too that may not be what you want to hear? But everybody has the right to decide for themselves what they're comfortable with, and it just seems to me that the type of transaction you have with other people, that Fehu energy, really is going to define that. If you can simply have no expectations, that's one thing, but the minute you do, if they're not in line with the other person's perspective or expectations, well, then there's a risk, isn't there, where you're not going to get what you want. And then how are you going to react? Are you going to react with the energy of Tristitia? You know, so that may be what the reading's about here today, but we'll see. We'll start out with 3 cards and see what we get. Oh, well, okay. This is interesting. The Queen of Wands, here, I've just got too much crap on my screen here. The Queen of Wands is an interesting, we start out with that. And then we have the Ace of Swords, and then we have the Three of Swords. So we've got one card from the suit of Wands, which is the fire element, and we're talking about, well, now what did I do here? I put that too far over. Now it looks like I'm looking weirdly into the screen, because I am. Anyway, the Queen of Wands is an interesting card. Well, I'll back up. I was starting to get ahead of myself here. So we have one from the suit of fire and two from the suit of, or the element of fire, and two from the element of air. So, because we have the Ace of Swords and we have the Three of Swords. Now, I think that, boy, I'm really, well, okay. I'm going to leave them in the order that they are, but I might ultimately interpret it differently. How about that? How about we say it that way? Now, the Queen of Wands is somebody who is, oh, I should show you, is somebody, she's the queen. She's a woman in authority. She's dynamic. She's action-oriented. She's strict. She can be also generous. She's talented. She's successful. You see her little familiar, her cat right there, looking straight on at us. She's not really. She's looking more into the future. She's holding a sunflower in her left hand. And that's the sunflowers signal vitality. They're obviously they're an expression of the sun, and so there's vitality and energy and growth. She also holds a staff in her hand, in her right hand. You see the lions on the sides of her throne right here, indicating strength. Inner strength, an expression of external strength as well, obviously with authority. You see also the family crest above on the back of her throne, or it could simply be that's hanging behind her throne. That's probably more likely, and I would venture to guess that although it could be. But you can't see where the back part of the throne is, because she's sitting in front of it there, and you can't see where it is. So it might be more like about shoulder height, and then this could be the family crest hanging down behind it, possibly. Now you also see over here, excuse me, possibly a depiction of 3 pyramids. So there's also an expression of higher will here. Anytime you see pyramids, you think about a spiritual journey to the Holy Land, basically. And so when you see that, it could also indicate higher self or a higher level of will. But again, she's dynamic, and how she interacts with others reflects that. And so we might be able to correlate Fehu with the Queen, but we'll see. Because I think maybe we'll set it in between the Queen and the Ace of Swords. But here we have the Ace of Swords. Now, the aces of any suit are said to contain all of the energy of the suit. And so here you have a hand reaching out from the clouds. They're a dark cloud, though, aren't they? So the unknown. Maybe deception as well. Just depends. And we see a hand reaching out from the cloud, holding a sword straight up, piercing a crown with garlands hanging down. Now, whenever you see a crown up there, that's denoting spirit. So again, you're not just dealing with higher self-energy with the Queen, possibly. You're also, and maybe we can talk about it in terms of inner authority with the Queen, but again, there's also a transactional nature with her, how she governs, in other words. So, but with the Ace of Swords, that is the beginning of new thought, okay? New ideas, a new sense of balance. The air element is about that. It's about the mental faculties. It's about intellect, reason, justice, fairness, cutting through deception. And as opposed to the water element, which would be more emotions, right? This is intellect. This is reason. And so something new has to come out, particularly if you're talking in terms of Fehu and Tristitia. If your transactions with people are ego-based, if they're really the quid pro quo business, well, maybe that's not really going to serve you very well today. It could lead us to the Three of Swords here, which is betrayal. Here you have darker clouds raining. With rain coming down, you have two swords that are technically behind this one. You could think of this as having two people betraying you, but it's piercing the heart and it's causing great pain. Likely within you, obviously not with the people that are doing that to you. We may take another card here, but you can see maybe why I'm not sure which card I really want to start with in terms of the reading. But definitely we're going to start with a Queen when we start the interpretation here. But so what we have then, we have transaction with Fehu. We have a sense of grief or loss or sorrow or what have you, because it's not going very well. But maybe it's not going very well because of the betrayal that's happening. Perhaps with the Queen, you have expressed yourself in a way, your own authority in a way that has bothered other people, maybe, that can't handle something like that. Not that you've done anything wrong, mind you. I mean, maybe you have, but not necessarily. It could simply be that the people you're dealing with are not necessarily, they're not really amenable to anybody telling them what to do, maybe. And again, we saw a little bit of that today in the esoteric influences, where we talked about feeling that collaborative efforts with others are holding you back when a new approach is needed. Well, that could be the Ace of Swords here, indicating that. And I think that I will move the cards. I think we're going to start with the Queen, go to the Three of Swords, and then go to the Ace of Swords. Because I think that either a new approach is needed in terms of what's going on here. You need to assert yourself, maybe, in a way that, and express yourself in a way that comes from a higher perspective, maybe. That would certainly align with that more positive aspect of the Queen of Wands. But you can't get past the fact that there's a betrayal going on. So maybe the grudge aspect, the secretive aspect of Tristitia is coming from outside of you, because somebody is doing something behind the scenes to undermine you, basically, and to betray you. That's what the Three of Swords typically means. It isn't you doing the betraying, it's somebody's doing that to you. And so there has to be another idea, another way, another direction that you express yourself, and, you know, maybe call them out for what they're doing. Or again, like what the esoteric influences say, that you may need to go a different direction, and the Ace of Swords can also be, or rather, swords can also be indicative of direction. You see that in the Six of Swords, where you see the most basic interpretation of that. You have a woman and a child in a boat with a man pushing them across the water. It's in the wintertime. You can think of that as a small family, if you will, but they're basically taking a journey over water. But the other way to look at that is there's a journey toward new perceptions, where you're shifting all of that, and you're developing something that's going to take you into a different direction here. How you see things. You know, maybe you've been stuck in one particular type of experience with the Six, and now you're ready to let that go and to go in another direction with it, with how you see things. But I do think that Tristitia is aligning with the Three of Swords here. Let's do one more card and see what it has to say, because I don't think we have really enough information. I mean, clearly, you know, if you're being betrayed, then maybe you need to, and it's at work or something, then maybe you do need to go somewhere else and work, or find something else, because you don't need that kind of nonsense. Perhaps your authority is not being respected. Perhaps you are trying to assert your own ideas and they're not being heard, and that would be, you know, using your own inner authority as the Queen of Wands here. But instead of people listening, you know, maybe they're feeling jealous of that. Maybe you're getting attention from higher ups or something, and that they would like to have, and they're not having it. Well, maybe they're not really doing what they need to do. Maybe they're not contributing anything to the situation. They're just sitting back in jealousy. And so that's where the Three of Swords comes in. But it feels like, you know, someone's undermining your authority because of jealousy, maybe, or envy. You know, and so maybe a new direction is necessary. I'm going to take the 13th one here. Well, we have another Swords. And the Page of Swords, you know, it's telling you to take a risk, basically. Either to confront the people that are betraying you, or to realize that this is an exercise in futility and you're never going to get anywhere. So maybe you need to do something else, to take another direction, to come up with a different pattern of thought. Something to either see the situation differently, and either you do have more authority and power than you know in that situation, and maybe you can begin to see that, or if not, then you can realize that this is an exercise in futility and it's time to move on. And maybe it's in other words, maybe it's the impetus that gets you to go and look for something else that turns out to be so much better than what you have right now. And maybe it's something you've always been looking for. So you never really know, because out of those crummy situations, you know, it really gets you to, it instigates you to do something different. And it seems to me like that's what they're talking about here. If the transactional nature of your experience at work, for example, is just not working for you, if it's not getting you where you need to go, and people are trying to undermine you in the process, then either confront the situation and figure it out, you know, and call them out for what they're doing so you can get it to stop. But see, will it? That's the other thing. Sometimes people hang on, and with Tristitia, there's the element of grudges here, and I just have to think that that's part of this Three of Swords. But again, here we have the Page. And even though he's diplomatic, it may not be enough. But again, if it is, then maybe it pairs with the Ace, and so that the Ace of Swords will do it this way. The Ace of Swords is saying we need to think about it differently, and maybe exercise some diplomacy. So maybe if getting another job is not an option, then maybe you have to figure out another way of being diplomatic. But again, you know, no matter what you do, it's going to be a risk, right? No matter what you do here, it's a risk. Either it's going to work out or it's not. And so you may, again, find yourself in a position where you have to consider another option, another place to work, another direction to take. Maybe it's as simple as, if the business you work for is big enough that and has different divisions, maybe you simply transfer to another division, and you can fulfill your potential there. So again, it's, you know, we're talking with the swords, the element of swords here is the element of air. So you're talking about strategy as well. We see that in the Seven of Swords, where strategy is involved there. But it can be really awful to deal with betrayal, like what is typically happening with the Three of Swords. And no matter what you do, there may not be any way to overcome that. It just may be what it is. I worked with a lady one time. She had such a sour attitude about everybody that no matter who you were, it didn't matter. It didn't even matter if you were the boss. She just had a sour attitude about everything and everyone. You couldn't befriend her. You couldn't even have really even even a civil discussion with her just about nothing, about the weather. She just would turn her nose up, and it was odd. She was an older lady, and I don't know if she just didn't like being around young people, but it didn't seem to matter. You know, she just couldn't quite get there with people. And it was a good group of people, so I didn't understand what the problem was. Obviously something in her personal life, but but it was too bad she couldn't let that go and come in and have a really nice experience at work with people. Instead, she felt superior and above everybody else. And I think it was just an odd situation. I was never very comfortable with her, so I gave her a lot of room. I just didn't want to get into that, you know, because it upset my day, so I didn't want to do that. But again, with the Queen here, we're looking at inner authority, to express yourself in a way that's dynamic, but then maybe someone doesn't like that, and so they're trying to betray you or undermine you, and so a new strategy needs to be developed with the Ace, and you know, maybe you lean into the future with the Page. That's possible. You take a risk on something else. But even if you stand up for yourself at work, that's also a risk. And so if you do so with the Page of Swords, it's suggesting do it with diplomacy. Be diplomatic in the things you say. You know, don't cuss them out. I mean, even though you might want to. I mean, we've all been there. And it's frustrating, isn't it, to have to deal with something like that. Because sometimes you're not really sure where it's coming from. And you got to figure that out. And, you know, with the Ace of Swords, the hand reaching out from the dark clouds, to me, that just signals that there's some deception here. So you may still have to figure it out. You know, who's doing what to you. You might already know. But if you don't, I mean, who knows? There could be others involved that you don't realize that are trying to undermine you. You know, some people, you know, they may not have much to offer. You know, but they certainly don't want anybody else doing it, because in their view, it makes them look bad. And then they start to act out, right? It's like, well, you know, if you don't have any ideas, that's fine. But don't be mean to people who do. And it kind of feels like that's what this is, that they want to transact in a way with other people that are, you know, that's negative and hostile and that undermines other people, and you're left dealing with it, you know, especially if they visit that nonsense on you. So that's an interesting way to end the readings for the week on Thursday. We had such a hopeful Monday. But there's hope here, so maybe with some diplomacy you can get them to soften up a little bit, and maybe they'll settle down, and, you know, you can have a more constructive relationship with them. The transactions you have, the relationship you have could be more constructive. So anyway, used to be a book back in the 70s when I was in college. I was studying psychology at Portland State, and it came out. I don't remember what year it came out, but I was getting close to graduating, and it was called Transactional Analysis, and oh my goodness, I mean, people got into that, and you had a certain faction of the department, of the people and the students in psychology that were more traditional or within the traditional types of psychological ideas and whatnot and theory. And then you had the TA people. And it was like everybody viewed them as, they put them in the category of the behavioralists, which wasn't really fair, but that's what they did. So you had these factions developing, and it was just interesting to watch all of that. I was just happy to be there. You know, I was happy to learn all this stuff, you know, and transactional analysis was interesting, but to me, it was just a little bit too wooden, but yet at the same time, it kind of gave you an idea of how interactions actually work, and what makes them work and what makes them not work. So anyway, so when I see Fehu, I think, you know, transactional analysis book. Sort of dates me here, but anyway, that's all I got. You know, watch the hearings tonight. You know, we'll see what happens. You know, see what actually, we'll start to learn what actually happened. Although a lot of that's been coming out anyway, but we'll find out what actually happened back on January 6th of 2021 and what led up to it and all of that. So, gotta be accountable for your actions, even those who don't want to be. So, even whoever's doing this, maybe this is about the hearings. I don't know. Anyway, Thanks for watching, and we'll talk again Monday. And have a good weekend, and be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.